At the beginning of the film, we see two police officers named Nick and Roy chasing an extraordinary fast and fat man who can stick to walls. Just a few days ago, Nick secretly buried gold fragments in his backyard, cleverly hiding them under a thriving orange tree. Nick's wife, Julia, immediately notices the unusual orange tree and asks about it. Instead of answering directly, Nick skillfully changes the subject to their financial situation. However, Julia reassures him that their love and connection are more important to her than material possessions. Later, at the police station, Nick tells his partner, Bobby, that he plans to turn in the gold as evidence from their recent drug bust. Bobby passionately tries to convince Nick to reconsider, emphasizing the financial benefits it could bring, especially for Julia. Despite Bobby's persuasion, Nick remains firm in his commitment to do what is morally right and not disappoint Julia. He promises Bobby that he will protect their partnership and keep him out of trouble. Suddenly, another police officer interrupts their conversation, providing important information about another drug syndicate's location. They immediately set off on a thrilling operation to apprehend the criminals. On their way, Nick jokingly sends a radio message, pretending it's a motivational message from Bobby, which brings laughter and camaraderie among their fellow officers. However, during the raid, Bobby betrays Nick and shoots him, believing that turning in the gold would be a mistake. But that's not the end for Nick. He regains consciousness and finds time frozen around him. Looking up, he sees a captivating vortex in the sky that draws him in. Suddenly, Nick finds himself in an enigmatic office, facing a woman named Mildred Proctor. Mildred reveals that Nick missed judgment because of his corrupt past as a dishonest cop, leading to a grim fate in hell. Despite this, she recognizes his valuable skills and offers him an extraordinary opportunity to join the RIPD. Their mission is to ensure these souls find their rightful place beyond the living world. Excited about the chance to return to Boston, Nick eagerly accepts, hoping to regain his former life. However, Mildred makes it clear that he cannot reclaim his old life. She promises to provide a positive recommendation during his judgment, offering a small comfort in the midst of uncertainty. Mildred then explains the mysterious beings they pursue, called Deados, deceased individuals who have avoided judgment and now live among humans. Once exposed, these seemingly ordinary beings reveal their monstrous true forms. Intrigued by this revelation, Nick asks about the secrets that allow Deados to exist in the living world, eager to uncover their hidden truths. Mildred explains that despite the existing system, some people manage to escape detection due to the high number of daily deaths. She warmly welcomes Nick to the RIPD in Boston. Later, Mildred introduces Nick to his partner, Roy, who was a lawman in his previous life and had a romantic relationship with Mildred. Unlike Nick, Roy was killed by his partner and prefers to work alone. However, Mildred informs him that they have no choice but to be partners. The two men return to the world of the living, where Nick witnesses his own funeral. He desperately tries to tell Julia the truth, but she doesn't recognize him. Local police officers, including Bobby, intervene and stop Nick. It turns out that RIPD officers appear and sound completely different to the living. The universe seems to prevent them from revealing their true identities. Nick appears as an old Chinese man, while Roy takes on the appearance of a hot blonde woman as their living identity. During their first mission together, Roy explains that Deados leave negative traces wherever they go, making it easier to track them. Signs of dying plants, malfunctioning electronic devices, and negative energy, all associated with negativity, can be linked to Deados. The two officers interrogate a man named Stanley, bombarding him with questions until he transforms into his true Deado form. Nick tries to handcuff the Deado, but it fights back, ripping off its own arm and escaping. As it flees, the Deado swallows pieces of gold. Nick and Roy chase after the Deado, and Nick uses its own arm to defeat it. The Deado vomits the gold pieces, and Nick recognizes them as the same ones he and Bobby stole earlier. In a moment of distraction, the Deado tries to attack Nick, but Roy shoots and kills it. Roy then mocks Nick's performance, irritating Nick and causing him to throw Roy in front of a moving bus, escalating their conflict. Back at the station, Nick convinces Roy to investigate the gold further, considering the length Stanley, the Deado, went to protect it. Roy initially hesitates, but Nick manages to assuage his ego and persuade him in the end. The next day, Roy takes Nick to meet Elliot, another Deado who serves as their informant. Nick questions Elliot about the gold, but receives no helpful information. However, Nick notices that Elliot is lying. Observing from a distance, Nick and Roy are astonished to witness Bobby meeting with the Deado. Bobby acquires the gold from Elliot before departing. Intrigued, Roy takes an active interest and assists Nick with the investigation, trailing Bobby to Nick's house. There, they witness Bobby excavating the gold that Nick had previously buried. Nick becomes aware of Julia's deep disappointment in him, while Roy demands an explanation from Nick. Nick admits that his motivation was solely money and confesses his ignorance regarding the gold's connection to the Deados. The duo continues to tail Bobby, leading them to the airport where Bobby meets an unidentified man. Nick and Roy conduct an ambush, seizing the man and taking him to a freezer at gunpoint. They interrogate him about the gold, but the man responds with nothing but arrogance. Nick threatens to forcibly extract information, but the man surprisingly undergoes a transformation, assuming the appearance of the large, overweight man encountered earlier. Returning to the present, Nick and Roy give chase to the Ditto. Their pursuit proves challenging, resulting in accidents along the way. In the end, Nick manages to seize the gold from the Ditto, but it escapes. At the station, Mildred reprimands them for allowing not only a Ditto to escape, but also exposing it to the public during daylight hours. Consequently, they are taken into custody by the Eternal Affair. It is there that they discover the gold is a component of an artifact known as the Staff of Jericho. This artifact has the ability to reverse the tunnel to the afterlife, leading to a catastrophic event where the dead rain down upon the living world, bringing about its end. Additionally, Nick and Roy are suspended from duty and face an impending hearing that could result in their erasure. Aware that time is limited, Nick seeks to reveal himself to Julia once again. Although there seems to be an initial connection, Julia dismisses him and departs. Unbeknownst to Nick, Roy witnesses the encounter and offers him wise counsel, urging him to allow Julia to move on and live without him. He emphasizes their responsibility to create a peaceful world for the living individuals they have left behind. Nick initially responds with negativity and speaks ill of Roy. However, after some time, Nick realizes the error of his ways and apologizes to Roy. The two men then agree to unite their efforts and prevent the impending apocalypse. Nick begins to suspect that Bobby is more than just a bagman. He believes Bobby may be a Ditto himself. However, Nick has not sensed any Ditto vibes from him. Roy reveals that there exists a rare artifact capable of masking the negative energy emitted by Dittos. It dawns on Nick that Bobby always carries a particular bracelet, claiming it was passed down from his grandmother. Meanwhile, Bobby meets with another Ditto to deliver a piece of another artifact. Their conversation crackles with the anticipation of completing the final piece of the golden puzzle for the mighty Staff of Jericho. The next day, a phone call from Julia to Bobby sets off a chain reaction of suspicion. Is Nick back in the game as an officer of the RIPD? Just as expected, Nick and Roy burst into Bobby's lair, catching him red-handed as he hurriedly conceals yet another precious fragment of gold. The tension rises as the two corner Bobby, demanding that he remove the medallion from his bracelet. In an instant, the world around them decays into a haunting tableau as Bobby relinquishes the medallion from his flesh. The battle for the gold ensues, resulting in Nick and Roy successfully apprehending Bobby without a fight. Back at the station, a startling truth unfolds. The officers have captured a horde of Dittos, including the one Bobby encountered the night before. It becomes clear that Bobby and his cohorts have orchestrated a grand scheme. When the evidence vault housing the golden treasure is opened, Bobby triggers an enigmatic artifact that cripples the RIPD agents. Seizing the opportunity, the Dittos seize the gold and vanish into the light of day, revealing their monstrous forms to a shocked public. A phone is passed to Bobby, confirming their triumph in obtaining every last piece of the gold. The big fat Ditto bellows his command, setting the Dittos in motion to construct the ominous Staff of Jericho. A spiritual battle unfolds as the brave RIPD agents plunge into the chaotic realm of the living. But with Roy's old Western roots, he effortlessly dispatches the Dittos, bringing a taste of justice to their unearthly existence. In the midst of the turmoil, a swirling vortex materializes overhead, guiding Nick and Roy on their relentless pursuit of Bobby and his gang. Yet, the road to the Commonwealth building, where the artifact nears completion, is guarded by the hulking figure of the big fat Ditto and his spectral allies. Ghostly vehicles manned by Dittos block Nick and Roy's path, setting the stage for a hair-raising chase through a decaying car park. Nick skillfully maneuvers the falling cars, outmaneuvering the relentless pursuers. Meanwhile, a sinister revelation unfolds as Bobby sets his sights on Julia, scheming to use her blood as a sacrificial key to finalize the construction of the Staff of Jericho. In a terrifying encounter, he appears before Julia, casting a shadow of fear upon her unsuspecting soul. Reunited, Nick and Roy confront the formidable big fat Ditto and his horde. Drawing upon his driving prowess once more, Nick leads them on a daring escape. Meanwhile, atop the towering Commonwealth building, Bobby stands on the precipice of sacrificing Julia to unleash the cataclysmic power of the artifact. But in a moment of heroic arrival, Nick and Roy disrupt his wicked plan, ready to face him and protect the ones they hold dear. But Bobby is not like other villains who indulge in monologuing. He swiftly attacks Julia without wasting any time. This sparks a fierce battle between the two RIPD officers and the Dittos. As they fight, The artifact begins to drain Julia's blood, activating its powers. Suddenly, the dead pour from the sky, adding to the chaos. Nick and Roy navigate their way through the relentless deados, each with their own mission. Roy takes charge of neutralizing the artifact, while Nick confronts Bobby face to face. The fight between Nick and Bobby intensifies, with Bobby clearly having the upper hand. As Roy struggles with the artifact, he hatches a plan. Summoning all his strength, Roy fashions a bullwhip and uses it to bring down a truck, aiming to destroy the artifact. Distracted by this turn of events, Nick seizes the opportunity and points his gun at Bobby, shooting him in the face. Nick rushes to Julia, but she is gravely wounded, losing a significant amount of blood. Time seems to stand still as Julia finally sees Nick's true appearance. They share a poignant moment, with Nick urging Julia to move on and continue living. He confesses his eternal love for her and lets her go. Julia awakens in a hospital, where a doctor, revealed to be the living identity of Mildred, assures Nick that Julia will be fine. As they prepare to leave, Mildred informs them that the eternal affair has given Nick a warning and added 53 more years to Roy's term. Roy is initially angry, but his mood changes when Mildred returns his beloved cowboy hat. The movie concludes with Nick assuming a new living identity as a Girl Scout wearing orthodontic headgear. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe Mango Recap for more video like this and help the channel grow.